to the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial Commemoration. We are a multi-agency traveling exhibit traveling around the country following the Lewis and Clark Trail since about January 2003 until September 2006. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the exhibits you'll be seeing. I wanted to show you a bit about this trailer we tow around with us. It carries all the tents and the supplies that go within the tent. The diagrams and photos on the trailer are really significant. It starts here in Monticello, the home of Thomas Jefferson, president at the time, and that's who it started with. President Jefferson had this dream over 203 years ago, and he used that, went with it, and found two men to go with him, Lewis and Clark. Meriwether Lewis was his secretary at the time, and he was the perfect man for the job, according to Jefferson, and he was able to get to the West. Although, while President Jefferson was hoping to find a Northwest Passage, an all-water route to the Pacific, they were unable to do that, of course, because of the Rocky Mountains being so wide and lengthy. However, they were able to take their huge keelboat up the Missouri River, fully loaded, 10 tons of gear and food, up a river against the current, all the way to North Dakota, where they stopped and waited in the winter. This picture here shows Gary Lucy's painting of the keelboat and the men working on the keelboat. More than likely, the captain standing atop in the cabin is more than likely Clark. He's a very good map maker at the time. He was only 40 miles off in calculating the miles from St. Louis all the way to the ocean and back. So it was pretty impressive. The rest of these photos show the peace and friendship symbol. This is our symbol of the Corps Discovery 2 with the red lettering around the outside. The original peace medal was made, there were over 80 of them made for tribal leaders. And all of them were given out except for one. There are some still in existence and many in private ownership. Along the way, the trailer shows paintings and photographs of scenes that Lewis and Clark would have seen along the way. Down here we show the tops of the teepees, the lodge poles sticking out of what would be the teepees of the Great Plains. And then this mountain peak above me, I'll turn this way so you can see. These white-capped mountains are to represent the Rocky Mountains that they did traverse, and the Bitterroots that they traversed took many months getting over the mountains, and when they finally did see the ocean, oh, the joy, was their saying. You can see the ocean here. Also, I'll have you come closer for a closer look of the drawing that Lewis made of a California condor, which has made a miraculous recovery since they're near extinction. Right now in Northern California, as well as the Grand Canyon, there are some recovery research and sanctuaries for these California condors so that they can make a safe recovery. There were down to 22 individual birds in the entire world, and now there are over 2,000, so it's quite impressive. You'll notice that on the wheel wells there are lists of various government agencies that have supported our venture. This is a multi-agency exhibit traveling all around the U.S., sharing the story of Lewis and Clark. This painting of Sacagawea, wherever you're from, you pronounce it the right way, is an incredible depiction of a young lady joined on an expedition, a camping trip for 2 years with a bunch of men she didn't know, and she was crucial to the expedition. With her was her baby, newborn, born February 11th, 1805, and was carried along on the expedition the whole way in a cradle board similar to this. And you'll also notice some of the things she's wearing is a deerskin dress, as well as the red line in the part of her hair. This is a cultural aspect relevant to the Mandan Hidatsa cultures. She's carrying it's a hoe used for gardening. And this was the primary tool of the women of the Hidatsa tribe. They did a lot of gardening. They're great gardeners. Here in the Tent of Many Voices, we invite community members as well as people from around the country to do performances, presentations, anything related to Lewis and Clark, and sometimes just barely related to Lewis and Clark. We've had programs in here from the medicine of the Lewis and Clark expedition, which is very relevant, to polka, which is not relevant at all, but it is relevant to the community. So we allow the community to come into our tent, present in our Tent of Many Voices. So it's a very good opportunity for community members as well as the other presenters related to Lewis and Clark. We get them from Virginia, from Ohio, presenters from North Dakota, a lot of musicians, artists, authors, and general informative interpreters. So that's the range of presentations we have in our Tent of Many Voices. Moving on, we want to go to our exhibit tent. That's this white tent with the Native American paintings on the front. Inside the exhibit tent is a story of Lewis and Clark in pictures, starting from the dream that President Jefferson had 203 years ago, and the search for the right person to go, or the right two people to go. And along in that exhibit is pictures that would go with the Lewis and Clark expedition, including some paintings of the scenery they would have seen 200 years ago, the Native Americans they met along the way, as well as the interior of a Mandan Earth Lodge, which is quite interesting as well. There is an audio tour offered. It's a 35-minute audio that is incredibly informative and very well put together. That is our exhibit tent. Along with our huge tents, we bring along this teepee. It's a Northern Plains style teepee. We set it up in the Gros Ventre style. It has a nice ring around the top, and we try to make it as tight as possible. It's hard to put together. It's quite impressive to see teepees set up by Native American women that are just super tight. You can ring them. But this one here is ours that we bring around from city to city along the trail with us. It will be also usually staffed with a ranger with a table. A lot of times we have buffalo items on the table, things made of buffalo. We have a buffalo robe, buffalo bones used as tools, several types of things related to the buffalo, which was the lifeblood of the plains. And inside the teepee, usually have a buffalo robe out as well, spread out for people to lay on. Today it's a bit wet. The ground is wet, so we didn't want to risk it. We didn't set it out. But if you'd like, you could take a look at these things on the table. We have school children and the general community come up, take a look at all the things on the table. And when we do have school groups coming through, the ranger does a regular 15-minute program about the buffalo products and the things that Native Americans would have used on the Northern Plains. So that is our teepee information station. Also traveling with us is a group of the Native American traditional games. They've been touring with us and sharing with the public a lot of games from various tribes. This is one called Double Ball. They love it. It's my favorite as well. It's a game that's been played by several tribes. There's various rules to this game depending on the tribe, and it's a very energetic game that really has no stop. But there are other games that they represent on the table here. You're welcome to take a look at those as well. The encampment behind me represents an original camp from 200 years ago of the Army, the military. And Discovery Expedition of St. Charles is encamped there. They have been doing demonstrations all weekend, great demonstrations on camp life, military guns, other artillery and cannon shoot-offs, all kinds of interesting presentations. In the distance is the military tent. It's the Army National Guard camouflage tent with a large truck as well. They have an exhibit that compares the military then and the military now. So there's a lot of different progressions of military garb, as well as ammunition, artillery, all kinds of different things related to the military of 200 years ago, the things Lewis and Clark used. In front of the military tent, the camouflage, you can see the red pirogue out there. That is one boat that Lewis and Clark took from St. Louis, Missouri, up to all the way to Great Falls. These pirogues, they actually had two, one was red and one was white, could carry up to 8 tons of food and supplies, so they were pretty handy for the expedition. They are giant canoes. Their name, pirogue, is a French word. They actually have a sail on them, unlike the regular canoes, like the dugouts that Lewis and Clark built at the Mandan villages and the Nez Perce village. Here inside the exhibit tent, we have the story of the Lewis and Clark expedition in pictures, and on these panels are some of the parts of the stories. And it kind of jumps around from panel to panel, and we have an audio guide that follows it. But I was going to give you the tour myself. It all started with President Jefferson's vision and his request to Meriwether Lewis to follow a westward journey to the Pacific Ocean and to map the West and find a trade route of commerce to the Pacific Ocean. Over here we'll see a photo of the letter Jefferson wrote informing Lewis that if he needed extra supplies along the way, that is the first American credit card right there. So they could purchase whatever they want on the government's dime. Once Lewis was hired, he realized it was more of a challenge than he could do alone. So he asked President Jefferson if he could choose a second commander. And he chose his longtime friend and supervisor on the front lines, William Clark. And William Clark happily agreed to go along. Clark, as I said earlier, was a very excellent map maker, and below his picture is his drawing of the map to the west, completed. So we're kind of jumping ahead into the future. This is his completed map to the west. Before they got too far, they had to hire members to go with them, some military men. And this is kind of a diagram of the members of the expedition, breaking them down into infantry regiment, corps of artillery, and the 9 young men from Kentucky, which turns out actually only a few of them were actually ever in Kentucky. And then there were several engagés and interpreters hired just for manual labor to bring the keelboat up the Missouri River. And of course, Captain Clark's slave, York, went along for the journey. Now these men were paid for their time. Many of them received about $5 a month. And after their return to St. Louis, their pay was actually doubled. The only 2 people not paid for their journey were Sacagawea and York, William's slave. We have a painting of a mock departure of the keelboat, the 2 pirogues, and a few of the canoes that also followed as trade along the way. Some of these photographs depict some of the meetings with Native Americans. This is a very common, very popular wood carving of the meetings with the Sioux tribe. On this side are some photos. This side of the panel we have paintings of the members of the expedition. This is a painting of Captain Lewis. He is wearing an otter skin tippet, it's called. It's all otter skins, and this is a string of white ermine. There were estimated about 250 ermine hanging from his cloak, and there were roughly a dozen abalone shells also attached to this otter skin. All these other paintings, many of them are from Michael Haynes. The paintings you'll see around here are also from Carl Bodmer and George Catlin and several other artists as well. This is Clark standing at Clark's Lookout, which is in today's Dillon, Montana. Below is a map of today's U.S., not the one that Clark drew. It's an accurate map showing their starting point, kind of hidden back here in St. Louis. The red is their trip in 1804 and 1805, following all the way out to the ocean. and their camp here at Fort Clatsop on the Pacific Ocean. And then the return trip is shown in green. The dotted lines show where Lewis and Clark both split. And Lewis took a more northern route, going up into Blackfeet country. And Clark took a more southern route, going through Crow country. And they met back here at the confluence and met up again before they got to the Mandan Hidatsa village again and headed back to St. Louis. This is today's photo of the reconstruction of Fort Clatsop, and it's kind of hard to see because the tent walls are kind of bent, but that is Fort Clatsop today. I'm standing inside a photograph of an actual Mandan Earth Lodge. The actual Earth Lodge stands in Knife River Indian Villages near Stanton, North Dakota. And you'll also see a few other drawings and paintings within this Earth Lodge, many of them drawn by Carl Bodmer, George Catlin. Inside the center of the Earth Lodge is the fire ring, and that's where a lot of the food is stored and hung. Lots of times Mandans dry their squash in circular rings and they hang them from ropes from the rafters so that the mice can't get to them. So it's pretty ingenious. They have several other incredible, there are beds throughout the Earth Lodge, and many of them have private closings on them so they have some privacy to their bedrooms. Over here, if you can get a close-up on this, is the exterior of this Earth Lodge. This is an actual standing Earth Lodge. It was recreated. The Earth Lodges are circular with frames of strong posts, and then they're covered completely with earth. They're very well put together. They maintain a great temperature year-round. When it's 40 degrees outside, it's roughly 36 degrees inside with the fire going, the horses inside with the people. It's a very warm structure. And in the summertime, you'll notice a lot of men sitting on the roofs. It's a very social area. In fact, there are paintings over here of the men sitting on their roofs while there's ceremonies and dances below. It's a very social gathering. Now today, there are still signs of the Earth Lodge's existence. If you go to Knife River Indian Villages, there are divots in the ground where the Earth Lodges once stood. So it's really neat. They're actually dug down about 3 to 4 feet before they're put up, so they have some earth insulation. Here is a kind of a painting of a ceremonial burial ground of the Mandan Hidatsa. To show some examples of more Indian dwellings, these are teepees very typical of the northern plains. And you'll notice a lot of dogs on the grounds. Dogs were the burden carriers. Just before horses, dogs carried all the supplies from one place to the next, whether they were staying in their summer camp or their winter camp or the other. The dogs would carry those supplies on travois. Here, we step into Chinook territory on the Columbia River. The Chinook had a very neat design to their boats, and that's how you could tell it was a Chinook boat. They had this spirit piece. The Lewis and Clark expedition met the Chinook on the Columbia. They were all very good fishermen and were willing to share their salmon as well. This is a painting of Celilo Falls in Oregon, a typical Pacific Northwest Indian tribe camp with full shelving and scaffolding for drying out salmon fillets, clams. The interior of a Chinook plank house. Many of the plank houses have 3 layers to them. The floor layer having the bottommost layer having the fire ring, and the uppermost or the middle layer is the sitting area. The uppermost layer circling around the fire would be the bedding and bedrooms areas. They would section off their bedrooms with cedar mats woven out of cedar bark. It was incredible feats.
Well, welcome to our military history tent. Have you been through our tent before? No. Well, we have a coin that we're giving. It's a souvenir coin that we make sure every one of our guests receives. And if you look on one side of the coin, you'll see the Minuteman. And that is a symbol of how the military started for our country during the Revolutionary War. And on the other side of the coin, you will see the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial, because the Lewis and Clark expedition was indeed a military expedition. And that's the reason for our souvenir coin. And you can't spend it, but it is a souvenir, and someday it might be a collector's item because the Bicentennial only happens at 200 years.
That's right.
So please make yourselves at home as you peruse through our tent. And if you have any questions, we do our best to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You got it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Right here. And then we have World War II memorabilia on this side for you. We have helmets of then, and we have helmets of now. Working with BDUs, battle dress uniform.
That's heavy.
DCUs. This is the desert camo uniform.
Oh, right. So it blends in. They're heavy.
Probably protected better than the steel ones.
I think so. However, these were quite versatile if you think about it. They used to bathe in it,
Yeah,
they used to
that's all I
eat
did.
out of it, and it also
Be
used to
able to take a
protect
bath
their
in it.
brains. Absolutely.
Grandpa used to talk about that. To be able to bathe and smell.
We have our MREs versus the C rations. So we have the then and now.
So those were the then, huh?
Mhm.
This is the now?
Right. And what we've done is we've opened up one of those MREs, meals ready to eat, and we have put it out here for you so that you can see the types of items that would be in there. MREs are issued to you when meals aren't readily available if you're going to be in the field or like down in Louisiana,
Oh, right.
that type of thing.
Yeah, I suppose if you're hungry.
And there are about 5,000 calories in one of those bags.
Oh, really?
And I've heard they're
Wow.
quite good.
You know, they really are. They're not bad at all. And you can make several meals out of it. If you don't like the main course, well, you always have your crackers
Your
and
peanut butter. You'd survive.
Or you'd have your crackers and cheese because it's either like peanut butter or cheese. There's usually a little packet in like this. It'll have salt and pepper, Tabasco, matches. You even have your, hoo-hoo, you ready? This is toilet paper.
So there you go. That's kind of clever. We can use that, can't we?
Yeah, and then they also give you like, they might give you creamer, sugar, iced tea, Kool-Aid, that type of thing, spiced
Kool-Aid.
cider.
And these are the old kind, huh?
Right. Those were called C rations. And you open those up and you kind of see how those were put together. You got your spoon, and it goes through, and you know how you can see through this package and it has like your toilet paper and matches, that type of thing. This is basically the same,
Oh,
and it
just
lists
listed on the
everything
outside.
that's on there for you.
Oh, matches. Gum. Toilet paper.
In the olden days, cigarettes were sometimes
Yeah.
in C rations.
Right. Because that was kind of a popular item.
Absolutely, for trade or otherwise. And then you go through and you can see how it was divvied up with the little cardboard. And here it tells you right what's on that one.
Crackers. Candy. Huh.
And this one,
Cheese spread.
let's see, so they even had the peanut butter and cheese spread
Yeah.
back then. And here we have an applesauce.
You guys would like that.
And in this one, we
Oh.
put
Turkey. Well, turkey soup, basically. Turkey
Right.
broth. Kind of cool, huh? Think you want to eat it?
Maybe.
Maybe. You got hungry.
It's too bad we don't have in our display a P38. Are you familiar with a P38? It's a little can opener that you keep on your keychain, and it opens up and you hook it and you're able to open up the
There you
cans.
go. I was
Oh.
wondering if
Yeah.
those might have come in the
Our
boxes.
teeth don't work. Yeah.
No. Not going to cut it.
So here, this is how we would heat our MREs. Okay, this is a heater. that you heat your MRE with. And you know your MRE, the main meal, black bean and rice burrito, it comes in a sealed pouch. And so you're able to set these into this envelope. And you put it all the way down in there.
Because I suppose you're in a microwave.
Oh, but this works well, let me tell you. And then you take your, now this is the canteen of then. And we take our canteen of today with the cups. See, it even has your cups so you can have your hot spice cider.
Very clever.
And you pour in your water. In there, a little bit of water. And right here it tells you do not overfill, so you fill it right to that line. And then you kind of seal it up just a little bit, and you put it up against a tree, and it starts to expand. And a chemical reaction starts, and it heats your food. You have hot meals right there on the tray.
That's great.
In fact, it gets so hot that when you do open it up, you don't want to burn yourself on the steamer.
No kidding.
So, and then you pick it out of there. And there's always, in those meals ready to eat, a brown spoon. See these tear lines? You rip it open and you eat it out of a pouch.
Don't even need a plate.
Throw it away, dishes are done.
Gotta like that. That's terrific.
Want to try on the flak jacket?
Nothing.
Pretty heavy.
Give it a whirl.
Anybody want to try it on? We can get you all dressed in our battle rattle.
Yeah, she's saying it's no way.
Try it on, Connor.
You'll
you wanna
probably
feel it?
You know what a flak jacket is?
No.
Give it a whirl.
Do you want to try?
Here.
We can help you put it on.
Here, I'll put it.
Okay. Got it?
Is it heavy, Dad?
It is.
Velcro you in here. This one comes around this side
This one's something around this
and
side.
that side.
All
There
right,
we
let's
go. We'll put you in a collar on there.
see. Dad's ready to go.
I'll hold your hat. You're in for a big backpack with you, Dad.
We can put your
All
pack
right.
on for you.
Give him a gun.
He's ready.
Plenty around.
Here we go.
You're
All right.
set. Now you're set to go.
Now I just need the training and I can go.
There we go.
That's right.
You can give them an M16, a couple of magazines with rounds and ammunition,
Here, hit that.
2 canteens.
Okay.
Yeah,
very hard.
it's pretty tough.
Times
We
of
can-
steel.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
wish.
wish.
Something like that.
Exactly.
That's great.
And then to loosen this, you just lift these triangles that are right here, so, and that will just like release it, so it just slides right up for you on both sides. Triangle right there. Just pull it up, and it just slides right up.
That's pretty heavy.
Be able to get that off, like so.
How heavy is that pack?
Well, it depends on you know, what your trek is or what your mission is. So it depends on what you need to put in there. If you're putting in your poncho, your sleeping bag, and if you're going to be out for several days, it could be 60 to 100 pounds, depending.
Sure you don't want to put this on?
Get it on. I'll help you so we don't. There we go.
That's neat. Now we're down here to Lewis and Clark.
Yep, and then we have our Lewis and Clark memorabilia here. Do you want to try on this uniform?
Nothing.
Now you'll notice that this one doesn't have any pockets. And that's because the fabric was so expensive back then. And so instead of having pockets, they had
Oh. A purse.
a purse. Or a haversack.
Okay.
We have to be manly. It's a haversack. Or they would call it their possibles bag. Because you could have anything possible in this bag.
Girlfriend would be a little, big for that. But
Yeah. And this one was their medicine bottle. You know, they used to have, they had two ways of curing people way in the olden days. They'd use Russia's pills, or he called them Russia's thunderclappers. And they had mercury in them, which is not good for you. And it would make you go to the bathroom very, very shortly after taking those pills.
Wouldn't be
Kind
good.
of cleaned you out.
Yes, it did. It would purge you, is what they called it. They would also bleed you, and that's where they had a little dish, and they would they thought a good bleeding would cure you.
Oh, that was kind of the leech thing. Or...
Yeah, well, yeah, they would cut them and then bleed them
bleed
and
them.
catch it in a bowl.
And this,
That's the Jefferson Peace Medal.
Oh.
Actually, there were 3 medals, but this one was the one that they would give to the chief of the most importance. And usually they could tell by the behavior of the other Native Americans or by the dress of the Native Americans, which probably was the main chief of the tribe at that time.
neat.
Ink set.
Oh, there's the like.
See, and here are the quills that they would write with. And this was the dried ink. And they'd open up the dried ink and they'd put it inside here and they'd shake it in there. Take a little bit of water, put the cork back in and shake it up. And then they'd go ahead and use the quill and dip in the ink, and then they would write in their journal, which is right over here. And then they could just write all kinds of things. Did you know that all of the men on the expedition were required to keep a journal? They were all required to keep a journal. So they would write their stories in here.
Different perspectives, huh?
Yeah,
How heavy was it?
exactly. Have you guys opened up the bear grease yet? Oh, you'll have to smell this. There's the bear grease.
What do you think?
What'd they use that for?
Bear grease, they took 600 pounds of bear grease with them initially at the beginning of their trek, and it was going to be used for cooking, and they ended up doing much more than cooking with it. They were in the river bottoms because they were traveling or using the waterways for most of their travel, and the insects, mosquitoes were terrible, and so they smeared this all over their face trying to keep themselves from just being chewed up from the insects.
Wow.
Another thing that happened is they sometimes didn't find any game for food, like deer or elk or that type, and so they were literally starving to death. And so they would eat the bear grease that they brought along with them. I bet you've all had an experience with this, haven't you?
We have some
Oh yes, prickly pear.
Prickly pear.
Boy, it was this type of thing that just wreaked havoc on their moccasins. Their moccasins wouldn't even last like a day. And they even had double soles or double thickness on the moccasins that they were wearing. And they would just get ripped up from the rocks and the cliffs and prickly pear cactus.
That's nasty stuff.
We have prickly pear in our yard.
Yeah, it's pretty tough stuff, isn't it?
It's nasty with your bare feet.
Yeah, Cindy's already got into it twice.
And here, roar, we have the grizzly paw.
Yeah.
Now, this one, probably in the early 1800s, when Meriwether Lewis and William Clark went by, this bear would probably be average size as a grizzly bear. Today's size, we would think that this is a huge bear. But because of civilization moving in on their habitat, you know that we've kind of like eliminated a lot of areas that they used to be. Go ahead, step on that. See how compare your foot size to that bear's. That's his left front paw there that you're stepping on. Isn't it huge?
Yeah.
Yeah. They could easily weigh 1,000 pounds, and when they stood on their hind legs, they could be over 10 feet tall.
Oh, that's big, isn't it? We wouldn't want to go to one of those.
This is a replica. Now, it's just pretend. It's a replica of a grizzly bear claw. Go ahead, touch that. Can you imagine having one of those bears with its great big huge hand and all those claws?
So those claws would be coming out from his hand. Yeah.
You can sure see why he was able to dig roots and eat roots and
Yeah.
rip open dead logs for the grubs and the animals that live in those dead logs for food.
Pretty cool, huh?
Take down large animals.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's what they wore in different wars.
It is, isn't it? I was told that the whiter the claw, the more valuable the claw.
Oh,
really? Maybe for the age of the bear. And then we have different types of fur. Now you have to remember that Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, one of the reasons that they were taking this trip or this journey was not only to explore new lands and do the cartography or the map making, but also England and France had been really working in the fur trade, and money talks, okay? And the United States kind of wanted to get into the fur trade also. And these are just some of the new species that Meriwether Lewis found as he was coming over to this side of the Mississippi. And that one is rabbit, one of them is red fox, and the other is otter.
I bet you can figure that out, huh, guys?
Yeah. I bet you know what that is over there that the journal's on, don't you? You know what that one is?
No guesses?
It's one of the water animals. Otter? What else?
He slaps his tail when there's danger.
Beaver.
There
Good
you
job.
go.
He's soft.
Now, you know their clothes literally rotted off their backs as they were trekking over for 2.5 years. And so that's the reason that we have the hide here. And do any of you know what this is?
No.
This is sinew. And it comes from the back tendon or the back leg of animals. And what they would do is they would peel a piece of that off, feel that. And that's what they would use for their thread as they would make their makeshift clothing out of the hides. And we have some pictures here so you can kind of see the difference in their dress. These are the uniforms that they would wear when they would meet the chiefs. Yet this was not common dress as they were trekking across. I bet you know who this one is, don't you? Who's that?
Sacagawea.
Absolutely, and
Palm.
Jean-Baptiste. That's right. You know who this one is here?
You guys know that one too, don't you?
York.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Miss
another
wanted
thing
to
I
keep-
really like to talk about on the expedition is, they were 100 years ahead of their time, not only in weaponry type things, but also in the fact that when they were on the Columbia River there at the Pacific Ocean, they were deciding where they were going to spend their winter camp. And what I mean by being 100 years ahead of their time, everybody in their entire group got to vote on where they were going to make their winter camp, whatever color you were or whatever sex you were. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That's right. There's something about that.
I bet you know what this one is. You know the story behind this one? Oh, this one's fun. You guys can take turns holding that if you want to. They call this, we call it several things. We call it a gopher. When you might call him a prairie dog. Or in the journals, it might be called the barking squirrel. And Thomas Jefferson's one of the duties that he had given the men is he wanted specimens of the new land to come back so he could see what they were running into as they came to the new land. And so they sent some prairie dogs back on the keel boat down to St. Louis. And there were only 2 animals that made it back to Jefferson alive. One of them being the barking squirrel or the prairie dog, and another was, do you know? It was the magpie.
We should know.
Wouldn't you know?
Can't kill those things.
And they tried everything. They tried to shoot that prairie dog. They tried putting ropes out so that they could snare them as they were popping in and out of the holes in the ground. They were digging to try and get them out. That didn't work, so they finally flooded them out. And that was how they were able to catch them alive.
Yeah, remember we read about that?
Yeah.
They found
This one, I bet you know what this one is, don't you? It's used for navigation.
Used for navigation.
Yeah.
Guessed on that.
Or
What's
is there
that
a
called?
different name?
You guys have any idea?
You can hold it. You hold it right there by that part.
Here.
Okay.
And then you can look through.
And then you look through the spyglass part right over here.
There you go.
There you go. And then you hold it
Straight up and down.
straight up and down.
Kind of more like that.
There you go. Now I'm not so sure you can see anything
I
there.
can
but
see
can
some.
you see some things? Good. That's a sextant.
Sextant.
And they used to use that when they were doing their map making.
Flip things around or something to line things up.
And I am just amazed at how accurate both Meriwether Lewis and William Clark were in their cartography or their map making. And the fact that they had gone over 8,000 miles and they were less than 40 miles off in their map making.
Cool. It's pretty neat. And, I don't know, line things up.
Right. This is the part that moves here. And then you look through this area right here. And then this would line up with the star and come back down and you match your
okay.
horizon and your star.
Right.
Right here, this would be loose. And then once you had matched the star and the horizon together, then wherever that hit on the angle, that would be your angle that you would be working with.
Cool.
Huh.
Pretty clever.
So they had their sextant, their compass, and another really important part that they took with them was the chronometer. And the chronometer was a timepiece that was set by Greenwich time. So that would help them with their latitudes and their longitudes in making the maps and knowing where they were.
Wow. It's moving around the corner.
And of course, we have our salute to the women that helped in the military, which I thought was really important. Right. And we have the Korean War pieces here. This would be the last one. Chronologically, we should start with phase 1 and then move through to phase 5 on our posters. As we've been doing our veterans salutes to many of the veterans who come through our tent, and we started a veterans log over there, and we have over 68 pages of names of veterans throughout the Montana cities that we have visited on this particular trip. And they tell us many, many stories about their experiences in whatever war they were in, and it's very touching to hear some of the things that they went through to ensure that we have our freedom. The story with this one is the man who's usually been doing our veterans salutes for us when he flies in is Colonel Putnam, and this is his old uniform
Neat.
from
Way a while back.
Yep. Or it's one of the uniforms that he had. So.
That's neat.
Well, do you have any other questions?
It's been a wonderful exhibit. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
With,
Yes, our mission here is to help set up tents, help tear down tents, provide 24-hour securities for the entire area. And then while they're having their programs, we thought it would be very, very cool to pay tribute to our veterans throughout the area. And also we thought we'd do a portable history museum of military.
Yeah, great idea.
Thank you much.
Dance all night, fiddle all day, dance all night and fiddle all day. Dance all night, fiddle all day, that's the soldier's joy. Oh, grasshopper sitting on a sweet potato vine, grasshopper sitting on a sweet potato vine, grasshopper sitting on a sweet potato vine. Along come a chicken and says she's mine. Dance all night, fiddle all day, dance all night and fiddle all day. Dance all night, fiddle all day, that's the soldier's joy. Peaches in the summertime, apples in the fall. If I can't have my pretty little girl, I won't have none at all. Dance all night, fiddle all day, dance all night and fiddle all day. Dance all night, fiddle all day, that's the soldier's joy. Oh, find the Northwest Passage, the quick way to the sea. Turns out that Northwest Passage nearly was the end of me. Dance all night, fiddle all day, dance all night and fiddle all day. Dance all night, fiddle all day, that's the soldier's joy. I curse that rocky mountain, so steep and slippery. I worry that another horse might fall on top of me. Dance all night, fiddle all day, dance all night, fiddle all day, dance all night, fiddle all day. That's a soldier's joy.